The maintenance bay door hissed open, and Kaela stepped through, her silver-blue skin catching the harsh fluorescent light. Her three-fingered hands trembled slightly as she clutched the data pad containing her mission orders. 3 cycles ago, she had been a princess of the Vorath Imperium, 4th in line to the Eternal Throne. Now she was a spy, sent to study Earth's defenses before the invasion fleet arrived. The role felt like exile dressed up as duty. "You looking for somebody?" The voice came from beneath an ancient combustion vehicle, rough and friendly in a way that made her translator chip work overtime to capture the nuance. Kaela adjusted her human-style clothing, grateful for the holographic projector that masked her true appearance from casual observation. Only in secure locations could she deactivate it. "I was told this establishment repairs mechanical systems. I have a device that requires attention." A wheeled platform slid out from under the vehicle, and a human male emerged covered in dark lubricant. He had warm brown eyes and a smile that seemed entirely too genuine for someone meeting a stranger. "You came to the right place. I'm Jake Reeves, and if it's got moving parts, I can probably fix it." She handed him her personal scanner, the one piece of Vorath technology she'd been permitted to keep for emergencies. Jake examined it with professional curiosity, turning it over in oil-stained hands. His touch was careful, almost reverent, in a way that made her chest tighten unexpectedly. "This is some serious engineering," he said, his eyebrows rising. "I've never seen anything like it. What company makes this?" "A very specialized manufacturer. Overseas." The lie tasted bitter, but it was necessary. Everything about her presence on Earth was necessary, she reminded herself. Her people needed this intelligence. The Vorath Imperium had conquered 47 worlds, and Earth would be the 48th. The fact that humans seemed so open, so trusting, would make the conquest easier. She should feel pleased about that. Jake's workshop smelled of machine oil, metal shavings, and something else she couldn't identify. He worked with a focus that reminded her of the master craftsmen in the Imperium's foundries, but without their cold efficiency. He hummed while he worked, occasionally talking to himself or the machines around him. It was disarmingly charming. "So what brings you to town?" he asked, not looking up from the scanner's internal components. "We don't get many visitors in Millbrook." "Research," Kaela said, which was technically true. "I'm studying your cultural practices, engineering specifically." "Engineering, huh?" Jake glanced up with that smile again. "You picked the right shop. My family's been fixing things in this town for 3 generations. My granddad always said a good mechanic doesn't just repair machines, they understand them. Listen to what they're trying to tell you." Over the following weeks, Kaela found herself returning to Jake's workshop far more often than her mission required. She told herself it was for better cultural integration, deeper intelligence gathering. She cataloged Earth's primitive but innovative technology, noted the lack of unified planetary defenses, observed the chaotic but strangely effective human approach to problem-solving. But increasingly, she came simply to watch Jake work, to hear him laugh, to feel the warmth of his unreserved acceptance. He taught her about combustion engines and electrical systems. She pretended ignorance while her superior Vorath education allowed her to grasp concepts instantly. But Jake's explanations revealed something her formal training had never included: joy in the work itself. Pride in creation rather than conquest. Satisfaction in helping rather than dominating. "You're a natural at this," Jake said one afternoon as she successfully rewired a circuit board under his guidance. "Most people can't see how systems connect, but you get it immediately." She deactivated her holographic projector in a moment of impulse, letting him see her true form for the first time. Her silver-blue skin, her violet eyes with their vertical pupils, the slight luminescence that marked Vorath nobility. Jake's hands stilled on his tools. "I am not from overseas," Kaela said quietly. "I am from the Vorath Imperium. I was sent here to gather intelligence before my people invade your world." The silence stretched between them like a physical thing. Jake set down his wrench carefully, his expression unreadable. Then he did something she never anticipated. He laughed, not mockery but genuine amusement, mixed with something that sounded like relief. "I wondered when you'd tell me," he said. "Kaela, I've been rebuilding alien tech since you walked in here. Your scanner isn't even close to human engineering. Plus, you said combustion reaction instead of engine on your second visit, and you knew what a quantum resonator was when I was joking around. No human knows what that is because I made it up." Heat flooded Kaela's face, her skin shifting to a deeper blue. "You knew? This entire time?" "I suspected from day one. Confirmed it by week 2. Jake leaned against his workbench, arms crossed but posture relaxed. "So here's my question. Are you still planning to help invade us, or has hanging out in a small-town garage changed your mind?" "I don't know," she whispered. It was the most honest she'd been since arriving on Earth. "My entire life has been about duty to the Imperium. We conquer because we must expand, because the strong dominate the weak, because that is the order of the universe." "Is it though?" Jake gestured around his cluttered workshop. "Because from where I'm standing, the universe seems pretty big on cooperation. You know why this old truck runs?" He patted the vehicle he'd been working on when they met. "Because hundreds of parts work together. Remove one gasket, one belt, one spark plug, and the whole thing stops. Strength isn't about domination, Kaela. It's about connection." She wanted to argue, to defend the Imperium's philosophy, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she thought about the past weeks. Jake had taught her without expecting anything in return. He'd introduced her to his friends without suspicion or fear. He'd shared his knowledge freely, simply because she'd shown interest. The Imperium called such behavior weakness, but she'd seen the community Jake was part of. People helped each other. They built together. They created rather than merely taking. "The invasion fleet arrives in 43 days, she said. "They expect my reconnaissance reports to detail your defenses, your military capabilities, your vulnerabilities. And what are you going to tell them?" Kaela looked at her hands, at the oil stains she'd acquired from working alongside Jake. "I could tell them that Earth is defended by more than weapons, that humans have something we've lost in our centuries of conquest. But they wouldn't understand. The Imperium only speaks the language of force." Jake pulled up a chair and sat down, meeting her eyes with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Then maybe it's time someone taught them a new language. You're a princess, right? Fourth in line to the throne? That means you have power. You have a voice. The question is whether you're brave enough to use it. My family would consider it treason." "And what do you consider it?" She had no answer, not then. But over the following days, as the invasion deadline approached, Kaela found herself making a decision that would either save 2 worlds or destroy her completely. She spent hours in Jake's workshop, not gathering intelligence, but designing something new, a communication system that could bridge the gap between human and Vorath technology, a gift that would demonstrate Earth's potential as an ally rather than a conquest. She transmitted her final report to the fleet 14 days before their scheduled arrival. It was not the tactical analysis they expected. Instead, she described a species that had achieved remarkable innovation through cooperation. She detailed human resilience, adaptability, and perhaps most dangerously for the Imperium's worldview, their capacity for extending trust to strangers. She concluded with a proposal that no Vorath princess had ever made, a diplomatic exchange rather than an invasion. The response came within hours. Her family's fury burned across the light years. She was stripped of her title, declared an exile, ordered to return immediately for judgment. The fleet would proceed with the invasion as planned, and Earth would be made an example of what happened to worlds that corrupted Vorath loyalty. Jake found her in the workshop that evening, sitting in the dark with her head in her hands. He didn't say anything at first, just sat beside her and waited. Finally, she told him everything. "They're coming anyway," she said, her voice breaking. "I failed. I thought if I could just make them see, make them understand, but they won't listen. They're going to destroy your world, and it's my fault for being so naive. Hey. Jake's hand found hers in the darkness. His palm was warm, calloused from years of honest work. You did the right thing. You took a stand for what you believed in, even knowing the cost. That's not failure, that's heroism. Heroism won't stop a Vorath battle fleet. No, Jake agreed. But maybe something else will. Tell me about their ships. Their weapons. Their weaknesses. Kaela looked up sharply. You can't fight them. Your technology is centuries behind ours. They'll obliterate any resistance in minutes. Maybe. But you know what humans are really good at? Jake's smile was visible even in the dim light. Improvising. We've been the underdogs our whole history, and we're still here. So come on, princess. Help me understand what we're up against. They worked through the night, Kaela sketching out fleet formations and weapon systems while Jake asked questions that revealed tactical thinking her people had never anticipated. He didn't plan to match Vorath technology. Instead, he looked for asymmetries, unexpected approaches, ways to make Earth's primitive systems work in ways the Imperium wouldn't predict. Your ships rely on quantum entanglement for coordination, right? Jake asked, studying her diagrams. Every vessel connected to every other vessel in real time? Yes. It allows perfect tactical synchronization. It's one of our greatest advantages. And also your greatest vulnerability. Jake tapped the diagram with his pencil. Because if someone could disrupt that entanglement, even temporarily, your entire fleet would be blind. Ships would be isolated, commanders would lose oversight, and all that perfect coordination becomes chaos. Theoretically, yes, but the quantum encryption is unbreakable. You would need, she stopped, realization dawning. You would need someone who understood Vorath quantum architecture from the inside. Someone who could provide the exact resonance frequencies and encryption protocols. Someone like a Vorath princess who happens to be very good at engineering. Kaela stood abruptly, pacing the small workshop. Even if we could build such a device, it would take months. We have 13 days. Then, we'd better get started. Jake made calls, while Kaela refined the technical specifications. Within hours, his small workshop was filled with people. Engineers from the local university. Ham radio operators with equipment that seemed impossibly obsolete. A materials scientist who'd retired to Millbrook. A high school physics teacher with access to laboratory equipment. They were, by Vorath standards, laughably unqualified. But they listened to Jake's explanations with focus and commitment, then went to work with remarkable efficiency. The FBI arrived on day 3. 2 agents in dark suits who'd apparently been tracking unusual technological activity in the area. Jake met them at the door with his characteristic easy confidence. We're building a quantum disruption device to disable an incoming alien invasion fleet, he said simply. You can either arrest us for unauthorized use of experimental technology, or you can help. Your choice, but we're on a timeline. The agents looked at each other. The taller one pulled out his phone. 20 minutes later, a military convoy was en route to Millbrook. General Patricia Hawthorne arrived on day 5, with a team of military scientists and enough security clearance to make Kaela nervous. She examined their prototype, listened to Kaela's explanation of Vorath fleet tactics, and made a decision that would define humanity's first contact with an interstellar empire. We're not going to fight them, she said. We're going to talk to them, but we're going to do it from a position of strength. If this device works, we disable their fleet long enough to force a dialogue. If it doesn't work, at least we tried something other than rolling over. Kaela worked alongside human engineers who asked questions she'd never considered. They approached problems from angles Vorath training deemed inefficient, yet somehow found solutions that worked. A retired mechanic suggested using Earth's magnetic field to amplify the disruption signal. A college student proposed a frequency-hopping algorithm based on whale songs that would make the device harder to counter. Jake coordinated everything with the calm competence of someone who'd spent his life making broken things work. On day 11, they had a working prototype. On day 12, they scaled it to planetary coverage using a network of satellites, radio telescopes, and equipment that had been designed for entirely different purposes but proved surprisingly adaptable. On day 13, the Vorath fleet dropped out of quantum space at the edge of Earth's solar system. Kaela stood in what had been hastily designated as Earth's first contact command center, a repurposed university gymnasium filled with improvised communication equipment. Jake stood beside her, his hand finding hers as the fleet's energy signatures appeared on monitoring screens. 15 battle cruisers, she said quietly. Enough firepower to sterilize your planet's surface. Standard formation. They'll expect immediate surrender. Then let's surprise them. General Hawthorne nodded to the communications team. Activate the disruption field. The quantum disruptor hummed to life across a dozen locations worldwide. Kaela felt the moment it took effect, a sensation like reality hiccuping. On the screens, the Vorath fleet's perfect formation wavered. Ships drifted, clearly attempting to re-establish coordination. Confusion rippled through their ranks. General Hawthorne opened the communication channel. Attention, Vorath fleet! This is General Patricia Hawthorne of the United Earth Defense Coalition. Your quantum entanglement network is currently under our control. We can maintain this disruption indefinitely, or we can release it and begin diplomatic talks. Your choice. Silence. Kaela imagined the shock aboard those ships. The Imperium had never been technologically challenged by a target species. The entire foundation of their conquest philosophy was superiority through advancement. Finally, a response came. Her brother's voice, cold with barely controlled rage. This is Crown Prince Tharak of the Vorath Imperium. You hold no authority to... Actually, we do. General Hawthorne's tone was pleasant but firm. We're not your subjects. We're not your inferiors. We're a sovereign world with technology that apparently works pretty well despite being primitive. Now, would you like to discuss mutual cooperation, or should we leave you floating out there trying to manually coordinate 15 separate warships? Another pause. Kaela squeezed Jake's hand, barely breathing. We will hear your terms, Tharak said finally. But know that this changes nothing. The Imperium does not negotiate with lesser species. Then I guess you'll have to accept that we're not lesser. The general gestured, and Kaela stepped forward to the microphone. Brother, she said, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. I am Kaela, formerly princess of the Vorath Imperium. I was sent to study this world's weaknesses. Instead, I discovered their strength, not in weapons, but in cooperation. They achieved in 13 days what our finest engineers said was impossible, because they worked together without ego or hierarchy. They trusted me, a spy sent to betray them, because they chose connection over suspicion. The Imperium calls this weakness. I call it evolution. Kaela. Tharak's voice softened slightly. You have committed treason, returned to face judgment, and perhaps... I'm not finished. She'd spent her whole life being interrupted by her older brothers. Not this time. I won't return to the Imperium. I've found something here worth more than any throne. Earth doesn't need to be conquered. It needs to be understood. They have so much to teach us if we're willing to learn. End this invasion, brother. Begin a real first contact. Show the Imperium that strength doesn't always mean domination. The silence stretched so long that Kaela thought they'd terminated the connection. Then her father's voice came through, resonant with the authority of someone who'd ruled for 3 centuries. Daughter, the Emperor said, you speak of cooperation. Very well. Demonstrate it. Our lead ship has sustained damage to its environmental systems during your disruption. 300 crew members aboard. Can Earth repair Vorath technology? Or is this cooperation merely words? Kaela looked at Jake, who was already grinning. Tell them to send technical specifications, he said. And yeah, we can probably fix it. The lead cruiser entered orbit cautiously, its captain clearly expecting a trap. Instead, a team of human engineers met the Vorath repair crew in what became humanity's first real exchange with an alien species. Jake led the human contingent, covered in grease within the first hour, explaining combustion principles to bewildered Vorath technicians who'd never considered such primitive approaches might have practical applications. Kaela served as translator, but increasingly found the two groups needed less mediation. Engineers, it turned out, spoke a universal language. Problems required solutions. Broken systems needed repair. The approach didn't matter as much as the result. Within 2 days, the environmental system was functioning better than original specifications. Jake had suggested a modification using Earth-based filtration technology that improved efficiency by 18%. The Vorath chief engineer, a gruff veteran named Kolthar, actually smiled when it worked. "Your people have strange minds," Kolthar told Kaela. "They see connections we never consider. Perhaps that's what happens when you must innovate rather than conquer." The diplomatic negotiations took longer. The Imperium was not accustomed to treating other species as equals, but General Hawthorne proved surprisingly skilled at interstellar diplomacy, and having 15 warships unable to coordinate their weapons systems provided excellent motivation for compromise. The agreement they reached was unprecedented in Vorath history. Earth would share certain technological innovations. The Imperium would provide advanced medical technology and quantum computing principles. Both sides would establish permanent diplomatic missions. Trade would be opened. And most importantly, Earth would maintain its sovereignty and independence. "The Council will debate this for years," Thorax said during the final transmission. "Many will call it surrender." "Then let them," the Emperor replied. "I've ruled for 3 centuries by knowing when to fight and when to adapt. This is adaptation. Besides," and here his voice held something that might have been amusement, "any species that can weaponize whale songs has earned my respect." The Vorath fleet departed 6 weeks after arriving, carrying trade goods, cultural exchanges, and a collection of Earth music that Jake had insisted would help them understand humanity. Kaela watched the ships fade from orbit from Jake's workshop roof, sitting beside him in the warm afternoon sun. "So," Jake said, "former princess, current exile, first ambassador of interstellar relations, what's next?" "I thought I might stay in Millbrook," Kaela said. "I hear there's a mechanic here who's pretty good at fixing broken things. I could probably learn a lot from him." "Pretty good?" Jake laughed. "I just helped save the world. I'm at least very good." "Adequate," Kaela said, but she was smiling. Her silver-blue skin caught the sunlight, no longer hidden behind holographic projectors. The town had reacted to her true appearance with curiosity rather than fear, another example of human resilience that would never stop amazing her. Jake's hand found hers, fingers interlacing. "You gave up everything, your title, your family, your entire world. Was it worth it?" Kaela looked at the workshop below, where Jake's friends were already planning modifications to a diesel engine using Vorath principles. She thought about the past weeks, about humans and Vorath working side by side, about the possibilities that opened when people chose cooperation over conquest. She thought about Jake, whose first instinct when meeting a spy had been to teach rather than condemn. "I didn't give up everything," she said. "I traded an empire for something more valuable. A home, a purpose, a future built on hope instead of domination." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "And maybe something else, if a certain mechanic is interested." "Definitely interested," Jake said. "Though I should warn you, dating me comes with some complications. My family's very involved in the business. Sunday dinners are mandatory. And my mom's going to ask about grandchildren, which might be biologically complicated." "We'll figure it out," Kaela said. "After all, we just saved Earth from an alien invasion in 13 days. How hard can a relationship be?" "Famous last words," Jake said, but he was laughing. They sat together on that roof as the sun set, watching the stars emerge. Somewhere among those stars, the Vorath fleet was returning home with stories of a primitive world that had changed everything. And in a small workshop in Millbrook, a former princess and a mechanic were proving that the strongest bonds weren't forged through conquest but through understanding. The universe, Kaela decided, was big enough for both empires and small-town garages. Big enough for warriors and mechanics. Big enough for an alien princess and a human who'd seen past her hologram to the person beneath. That was the real strength of humanity. The ability to look at something unknown and choose connection instead of fear. It was a strength worth protecting, worth celebrating, worth building a future around. And in Jake's workshop, surrounded by the smell of oil and metal, working side by side on projects that bridged two worlds, Kaela found something she'd never expected to discover when she'd first stepped through that maintenance bay door. She found home 6 months later, when the first official Vorath diplomatic mission arrived with Kaela's father aboard. The Emperor found his daughter covered in engine grease, arguing cheerfully with a human mechanic about proper torque specifications. He watched them work for several minutes before clearing his throat. "Daughter," he said formally, "the Imperium has sent me to discuss your status." Kaela straightened, suddenly aware of how she must look, covered in dirt, wearing human work clothes, her formal bearing abandoned somewhere between the engine block and the transmission. "Father, I didn't expect you to come personally. The Emperor does not send messengers for matters of succession." He studied her with those ancient violet eyes that had witnessed centuries. "Your brothers have proven. Disappointing. Tharek is too rigid. Kelvor too impulsive. Nathir thinks only of glory." He paused. "But you, Kaela, you saw what they could not. You chose adaptation over tradition, evolution over stagnation." "I chose what was right," Kaela said quietly. "Precisely." The Emperor smiled, an expression that transformed his stern features. "Which is why the Council has voted unanimously. You will be Crown Princess, heir to the eternal throne. With one condition." Kaela's heart stuttered. "What condition?" "That you remain here, on Earth, as permanent ambassador. That you continue this work of building bridges between our peoples. That you teach the Imperium what you have learned." He glanced at Jake, who'd been standing frozen with a wrench in his hand. "And that you follow your heart wherever it leads." "I don't understand," Kaela said. "You want me to be heir while living on another world?" "The Imperium needs a new kind of leader," her father said. "One who understands that true strength comes from alliance, not conquest. Who can see value in those we once dismissed as inferior. Who can look at a primitive workshop and recognize the genius within." He stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have already changed our people, daughter. Continue that work, rule from here if you must. The throne can wait until you're ready." After he left, Kaela stood in stunned silence. Jake set down his wrench carefully. "So, Crown Princess, future Empress of an interstellar empire. Think you'll still have time to help me with this transmission?" Kaela looked at him, at his oil-stained hands and earnest smile, at the workshop that had become her sanctuary, at the future stretching before them like an open road. "Jake Reeves, I just became heir to one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy." "Yeah? And I still choose this. Choose you. Choose the work we're building together." She moved closer, leaving grease prints on his shirt. "Besides, someone needs to teach the future Empress of the Vorath Imperium proper torque specifications. Apparently my technique needs work." "Your technique is terrible," Jake agreed, pulling her into his arms despite the grease and grime. "Good thing you've got an excellent teacher." They kissed there in the workshop, surrounded by the tools and machinery that had brought them together. Outside, Earth continued turning. Above, the stars watched with ancient patience. And in the distance, both human and Vorath observers documented what would become the foundation story of a new era. Not a tale of conquest or domination, but something far more powerful, a story of connection, of understanding, of love bridging the impossible distance between worlds. In the end, that was humanity's real strength, Kaela realized. Not their weapons or technology or defiance, but their absolute, unshakable belief that the universe was better with connection than without it, that strangers could become family, that differences could become strengths, that a small-town mechanic and an alien princess could find common ground in a workshop filled with broken things waiting to be made whole. It was a strength that would reshape the galaxy. But it started here, in Millbrook, with a man who saw past appearances to the person beneath, who taught an empire that the greatest power wasn't in taking, but in giving, who proved that sometimes the most revolutionary act was simply offering kindness to someone who expected judgment. The invasion had been prevented. 2 civilizations had found peace. And a princess had discovered that home wasn't a place or a title, but a choice. A daily decision to build something better together than anything she could create alone. She had chosen well. If you have enjoyed this story, tell YouTube to send you similar stories by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and leaving a comment.